Speaking of thankful, John, we may need to reach for this one, but let's talk a little bit about what we are thankful for with the Cincinnati Bengals. Not going to be easy. I almost wish, if we're talking about this segment, I almost wish that the Bengals maybe started off 1-4, and now they rattled off. They went 4-1, and now they're 5-5. That way, we'd be a little more positive maybe at this point. But I'm going to put you on the spot, buddy. I'm going to let you go first, and it could be something. Hey, I'll even allow cynicism here if you'd like, with your grateful, whatever you're grateful for with the Bengals. But seeing as how it's Thanksgiving, I thought that it would be appropriate that we talk about something we're thankful for with the Cincinnati Bengals in 2018.
All right. Always thankful for the helmets. Never change. I'm just glad it hasn't changed in my lifetime. So forever grateful for that. Always thankful. People who know me as like more of a, I'm pivoting more towards player fandom than team fandom and team allegiance. And when it comes to just how players just kind of act and compose themselves as, players and representations of the league, I don't care if they're divas. I don't care if they're upstanding citizens. I think they deserve to be whoever they kind of want to be. But I am grateful that the Bengals of at least my adolescence and teenage years, and now I'm 22 years old. I'm appreciative of that for the most part. They're pretty upstanding guys, and they're pretty well composed, and they just kind of, even though we like to dog on some of them for the most part. I think that for the most part, under Marvin Lewis, he's put together a team of pretty solid human beings for the most part. Guys like Andy Dalton, AJ Green, Geno Atkins, they're Carlos Dunlap, Michael Johnson. They're just guys that are like really easy to root for, and they don't really make a fool of themselves. When some other teams kind of do so. And again, I don't hate guys like Odell Beckham or other guys like that who kind of appear in the media too soon, because I understand that there's a lot of more context than I think a lot of people miss when they look at players and their social media interactions, whatnot. But the Bengals, even if they are stuck in their ways and they're, consistently mediocre, they kind of always bring me back, because it's easy to like the players on this team just from the way that they are as athletes and how they kind of not only just help out in the community, but just how they carry themselves. And I think they always have a team that's really easy to root for, and kind of guys whose stories that you always enjoy and like to follow. And honestly, just listening to me talk is a little bit cheesy and whatever, but I just think that's always something that I'm appreciative and I'm thankful for, even if we want a better roster every single year. It's just guys that I believe are just really easy to root for, and really, players that you can look up to, I guess.
That's a good one. I like that one. I'm going to say a couple of things here, and I agree with you, John. I agree that, there are the Carlos Dunlaps, the Geno Atkins guys, the Michael Johnsons, who are always nominated for the Walter Payton Man of the Year. There are a lot of good guys on this roster, which is, cool to see. You saw, even a guy, Drake Kirkpatrick, he's visiting senior homes and dancing with old ladies and doing cool things like that. That's something you don't see from. It shows a level of maturity that we did not see from the Bengals in the mid 2000s, late 2000s, even when whatever you want to call it, the egos were running rampant, and there's some problem children in the locker room. That's not really the case anymore. One thing I'm going to say that I'm pretty thankful for, and it's kind of ironic, and I apologize to our guest, Joshua Finney, about it, but I'm grateful that even though we have experienced a lot of heartbreak as Bengals fans over the past 16 years, I'm very grateful that the past 16 years with the Cincinnati Bengals have looked nothing like that of the Cleveland Browns. I'm looking at their records from 2003 on, not one playoff appearance. 5-11, 4-12, 6-10, 4-12, 10-6. Surprising they didn't make it in that year, but 4-12, 5-11, 5-11, 4-12, 5-11, 4-12, 7-9, 3-13, 1-15, 0-16. 0-16. You didn't win a game. Imagine rooting for a team that year. And then they're 3-6-1 this year, probably heading to a losing record, but headed in the right direction. So from that standpoint, I am grateful that the Bengals, even though we've been frustrated with them, even though we've been and are frustrated with Marvin Lewis at this point in time, we have to at least sit here and say this generation, your generation of Bengals fans, John, has experienced a much better brand of football than that of a previous generation. Now, when I really started, I mean, I've been a fan since the late '80s when they made that Super Bowl run, but I mean, I can remember watching games vividly in the late '90s, late '90s, early 2000s, where guys like Jeff Blake and Carl Pickens, and I mean, they struggled to win 6 games a year, much like the Browns did, and this team is different, and I think because of that, the expectations are different. And I think that's a good thing. Now, the expectations, since they are different, they've reached now a boiling point where we're looking for changes. And I guess that brings me to a little bit of a second part where I'm thankful for. And I'm going to throw a little caveat, a little disclaimer to it. There are a lot of changes that still need to be made, folks. There are a lot of changes that still need to be made. We can argue coaches, we can argue organizational practices, all of that stuff. But at least the Cincinnati Bengals have changed a little bit in the fact that there have been some major issues with coaching over the past couple of seasons. And whether it be in season or this past off season, the Bengals made decisions. Marvin Lewis made decisions to let go of coaches or not retain them. Unfortunately, one of his hires really blew up in his face this offseason, but he made the needed decision in order to potentially salvage this season to get rid of Terrell Austin in the middle of the year. These are things these past two, I think we mentioned it last week, John, getting rid of Ken Zampese last year, getting rid of Terrell Austin this year, these are things that did not happen for a very, very long time with the Cincinnati Bengals in terms of getting rid of incompetent coaches in the middle of a season. Many will argue that Marvin Lewis may fall into that same category at this point. But those are a couple of things that I am thankful for with the Cincinnati Bengals as we head to the Thanksgiving holiday. And despite the 1-4 recent skid, they are still alive theoretically for the playoffs. It's going to take them winning some games, probably games that we expect them to win, but that's another story for another time. Jeff Andy says, I'm thankful for being old enough to remember seeing the Bengals in 2 Super Bowls. Andrew Seiler says, I'm thankful for Chris Collinsworth partnership with Camargo Cadillac. And I'm thankful that Andy Dalton is still healthy.
Man, where's some wood to knock on? My God. There we go.
Cincy fan Jungle City. I'm thankful that I at least have seen a Super Bowl as a Bengals fan. We didn't win, but damn close to it. True. John Telly with the mic drop here. John Telly, I'm thankful for OBI, but Wednesday evenings wouldn't be as enjoyable. There it is.
That was the one correct answer out of all of this.
That's the best answer. I can't go beyond that one. I don't think we can fight that, right?
No, we can't fight facts.
Yep. Well, thank you, John, and everybody else for tuning in and enjoying the show. We have fun doing it, so we're just glad that you guys enjoy it and tune in. We hope that you have a happy Thanksgiving, whatever you may be doing. Friends, family, even those who work, whatever. Just enjoy yourself, be safe, all that good stuff. But there are things, even though there are people who think the sky is falling on the Cincinnati Bengals, there are things to be thankful for, and there is still a third of the season, right? A third?
Yeah, long third.
Yeah, of the season to be played. So they've got 6 games left. They can still win. They can win a number of those and make a playoff push. The AFC beyond the division leaders is pretty weak, so maybe they could surprise us and do a little something special this year still. So that is that. Let's move on to some listener questions, John. And for those who are tuning in, you can text or call us 949-542-6241. 949-542-6241. You can get a hold of us that way. Otherwise, we've already seen a bunch of questions in the live YouTube chat, so I'm going to start getting to some of those, John, before we leave and celebrate the holiday. Let's see. Seeing stuff about Hunter Sharp, the guy that the Bengals grabbed.
That's a fake name. I have no idea who that is.
That is a, oh boy, here we go. Amanda Bramble just throwing an early grenade into everything. Basically, do you think the Bengals should move on from Andy Dalton and draft another quarterback in 2019? And do you think we should fire all the coaches and start fresh with a new coach? And let's just go there. Do you think clean house right now as you sit here right before Thanksgiving, clean house with coaches and quarterback, or somewhere middle ground, keep it as is and really try and rectify certain position groups? Where do you stand on this? And I think I know where you're going to go, but go for it.
Eventually the great purge has to happen within the next 2 years. It's still very early in the draft process, but I don't know if you've been keeping up with college football, but quarterback class for 2019 does not look very solid. And like if the Bengals wanted a quarterback for the future, they should have taken in the last 2 drafts. And 2017 they had a great chance to do so. Patrick Mahomes went right after John Ross, but regardless, like eventually Marvin and everyone associated with him long term has to be purged from the roster, and I think they have a great opportunity to do so after the 2019 season when Tua from Alabama probably declares for the draft. Tank for Tua is probably on the minds of a lot of teams right now. Eventually, I want to move on from Andy Dalton because I know he's a limited quarterback, and combined with Marvin Lewis, that's a limited potential for your team, quarterback and head coach wise. I don't like just from general forecasting beyond this year, Andy Dalton probably gives them the best chance out of any other quarterback that they could obtain beyond from him. And I know a lot of people want Marvin fired, but the dude signed a 2-year extension this offseason, and Mike Brown hasn't fired him once his contract expired. There's no way he would fire him with 1 year left on his contract. So I'm in favor of the purge eventually when the time is right, and the time probably would have been right last year or the year before that. This year, just with how the way things have played out, they kind of missed their chance, and now they got to wait for that next opportunity.
Yeah, Tua's a lefty, right? I mean, last time the Bengals had a lefty quarterback, he was pretty good for him. So, that makes some sense. But here's my thing, and I'm with you on the 2019 quarterback class. I think that even if it's a draft a guy to groom behind Andy Dalton for a year or two, I don't think this is the year to do it. I don't like any of these guys as quote unquote franchise quarterbacks. Very, very weak class in that regard. And I think that if you're not going to get the quarterback of the future, or usually a new coach and a new quarterback go hand in hand.
Right.
That's just how it usually works. This franchise and this era of Marvin Lewis, this Andy Dalton and Marvin Lewis and Mike Brown, they're conservative, they're not overly flashy, and they kind of know each. So I'm kind of with you. Hey, let's play this thing out till Marvin's contract, including with Andy. Again, try and reset the pieces. We know who Andy Dalton can be when the surrounding talent is there. When he had AJ, Tyler Eifert, Marvin Jones, Mohamed Sanu, all these guys, we've seen who Andy can be, and he can be pretty dang good. Offensive line, all that kind of stuff. So I think maybe at that point you say, okay, give them this year. If they don't make the playoff push, give them another year, reload on both sides of the ball, see what you can do. And then if you're kind of stuck in neutral once again, which I'm betting they probably will be, then that's when you say, you know what, new coach, new quarterback, let's move on.
And just to throw like an extra thing in there, the Giants went out and got a new head coach in Pat Shurmur, but they took a running back instead of a quarterback second overall, and now we see where they are right now. So when you bring in a new head coach, it has to be a new quarterback in there, or else you're going to be stuck in even further purgatory than when you were.
Yeah, and here's the other thing to think about. When the 2019 season is over and we're potentially looking at new coach, potentially new quarterback, Andy Dalton will be in his early mid-30s. A.J. Green will be in that same age range. Carlos Dunlap will be in his mid-30s. Geno Atkins will be in his mid-30s, early mid-30s. Your star players, at that point, you could probably say the window that existed with the 2010 draft class on, the 2010, 2011, where you got the bulk of your stars, you can probably say that window is closed. You gave them 10 seasons. And if you cannot win a championship with guys who have made multiple Pro Bowls, set franchise records, all of that, at that point, you could probably say that window is closed. Yeah, we can still let them play out their contracts or whatever, but you got to start building around other people, including quarterback and all of that. I think at that point, like I said, you're 9, 10 plus years into the thing with these guys. And at that point, that championship window that was wide open in that 2013 through 2015 era or group of years has probably closed. So that, Amanda, is what I think the Bengals should probably do going forward. I think, John, to a certain degree, sounds like you kind of agree a little bit, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm seeing a lot of comments back about Josh Finney, which is pretty funny. Someone had said Baker Mayfield is the Carson Palmer to the Browns back in 2003. I saw another one that was pretty good.
That's not a bad analogy, though. Carson Palmer, first overall pick, Carson Palmer.
Yeah. There was something I saw about the 4th and 3 this last week, and I think this is a hot topic based on what you wrote. I've written about it. Many other people have written about it on Cincy Jungle. The 4th and 3, the 4th and 3 heard around the world, John. Cincinnati needing to drive down the field, at least kick a field goal, and maybe score a touchdown to win. And, believe it or not, with all the struggles and everything, that's what the Bengals did at the beginning of the year, right? They were down or they were tied or whatever. Even in that Pittsburgh game, they came back, and you're like, hey, man, these guys, no matter what, they can come back. They kind of started to do it a little bit, even without A.J. Green out there. But inexplicably, 4th and 3, the ball goes to Cody Core, the guy who was your 6th wide receiver that you kept when you made the final roster cuts. How do you explain that? Now, there are people that say, Dalton went through progressions. I haven't really looked totally at the film or whatever, but he went through progressions, and Core was the guy that, he was maybe his 3rd look, and that's where he went. There are people who say, why is he even on the field at that juncture? I'm kind of like, I guess, a little bit in the middle where, yeah, why are you going to him? But more so than that, if you don't trust him, why is he on your team?
Yeah, and I don't know why the Bengals would ever, at this point, trust Cody Core, because, as you mentioned, he has more incompletions thrown his way than completions through 3 years in his career. There was that whole talk about 2017 he was supposed to be the new number 2 in that offense, and ended up not catching a single pass that season. The play itself at this point is pretty overanalyzed. Core was, believe it or not, the best option in terms of just schematics and just matchups on against that defense, against that personnel. But the fact that you would put him there, that you would put him in the position to take advantage of that, is mind-boggling. And the fact that Auden Tate was in that exact same spot, about to run that exact same route before the Bengals had to call a timeout in order to not take a delayed game, and then you take Tate out and put Core in, it makes it even more mind-boggling than it already is. But just that whole sequence of events, and how the Bengals had the same personnel package, the same formation, the same look for 2 or 3 consecutive plays, and the Ravens managed to counter it perfectly and make a play on a route that they pretty much knew was coming with a bad player. It's like the worst possible late game management that you could possibly conjure up. And I think Andy Dalton has to be held accountable for, allowing that to happen and not changing the play and not adjusting something, knowing that the Ravens knew what was going to happen. And you have to hold Bil Lazor accountable for just not being creative enough. They'll have to be able to win these close games against the division rival on the road. And that specific scenario is just so typical at this point with this team. And I think it shows a lot about who Bil Lazor really is as a play caller.
So here's also my thing, right? Marvin Lewis after the game, I don't know which media member it was, but a media member asked Marvin Lewis after the game, basically, what's going on with Auden Tate, right? He was active last week, didn't get anything his way. He was active this week. He was out there, I think, one play, made a catch. It was just short of the first down, but he made a catch, contested. You don't trust him, his size, his hands in that situation. He's a rookie. We know how Marv can treat rookies at times, so he's not out there. Core is. You would think that Auden Tate, he's bigger than Core. He's slower, but he's bigger than Core, and he has shown the propensity to catch a lot of difficult passes and whatnot, so he may have a little bit better chance. Besides the point, okay? Marvin didn't trust Tate. Lazor didn't trust Tate to be out there on that play. Marvin then says, Tate's a practice squad guy. We just called him up, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so you're saying publicly that you basically don't trust Tate at this point, right? So why then, when the trade deadline loomed, and you knew A.J. Green was hurt, who knows what you really believed about Cody Core at that point? You probably primarily were keeping him around for special teams. Josh Malone, hurt. Why then did you not go make a move for a veteran guy to potentially help and be a Band-Aid if that's how you feel about Auden Tate? That's what I don't understand.
I think it's more indicative of their misplaced faith in a guy like Cody Core. And similar to Core, there's Alex Redmond, Hardy Nickerson. I guess Cody Core is just the receiver version of both those two. It's just constantly year after year, we see this team try to make things work. They stuck their necks out for Redmond. Marvin obviously has the connection with Nickerson, and I guess Core is just in that same boat as if we've either publicly acclaimed these players or we've demeaned his competition at the same position group. Where in the case for Redmond, it's kind of like Westerman, and I guess for Nickerson, I guess is Malik Jefferson would be the other part of the analogy there. It's just them and specifically Lewis, trying to make things work and trying to make them, more than what they are instead of just recognizing, a lapse of judgment or player evaluation and just the unwillingness to kind of deviate from that. Because if Auden Tate is playing for Cody Core, if Christian Westerman or Trey Hopkins is playing instead of Alex Redmond, if Malik Jefferson's playing instead of Hardy Nickerson, this team at least is probably a little bit noticeably better. And I would for sure trust Tate to make that catch and to make that play over Cody Core because he literally just made the same play earlier in the game. And it's clear that Auden Tate's getting like the John Ross treatment at this point, and that's something that I guess we can always expect with Marvin Lewis.
Yep. Moving on, we'll do two kind of quick ones and get out of here, John. Someone had asked about Bil Lazor's job being in jeopardy. I think was it Nathan McGuire or I forget who it was in the Cincy fan Jungle City. Lazor's job being in jeopardy. Here's my thing with it. Courtesy of Jay Morrison of Athletic Cincinnati, he writes he did some updated stats after the game on Sunday. Total offense 25th, rush offense 25th, pass offense 21st, scoring offense 11. To me, way too many 3-and-outs. And when you have a struggling defense, it makes them struggle more when you're feast or famine and you're going through this. What was it, John? On the first half, 5 of their 6 possessions were punts?
Yep.
Can't have that. Even without A.J. Green, you can't have that. So is his job in jeopardy? Again, we're looking. There was the question about Amanda, the coaching staff, or is it now? It's you get rid of your defensive coordinator. Is it time to get rid of the offensive coordinator and start over once again in 19? I
think he should definitely be held accountable when they look back at the season in review because. Even with like the end of or the games in 2017 where he took over, I think they still finished like pretty much on the bottom of most statistical categories. So the Bil Lazor era of the Bengals had 4 good weeks, and that was when both AJ Green and Tyler Eifert were on the field.
Yep.
So I think just similar to Terrell Austin, he kind of had this mindset like if we can force a lot of turnovers, we'll be at least a competent defense. And I think with Bil Lazor said, if we can rely on the presence of AJ Green and Tyler Eifert throughout the season, we can be a competent offense. And as we've seen with both scenarios, if shit hits the fan and they don't have the original plan in place, both Austin and Lazor in this specific case has failed to realize how to adjust on the fly and keep things moving, and just basically he's falling flat on his face at this moment. And I don't think any Bengals fans should be confident that this guy is competent enough to handle things when things get bad, and that they should definitely be in the market for a more innovative and creative offensive mind going forward.
Yeah, that's a great point about, what they were relying on, what they were relying on Austin and Lazor at the beginning of the season. I think also Lazor probably was relying on the fact that Austin's unit would get more turnovers and create field position opportunities for them, short field, be able to get points, all that kind of stuff. And that just didn't really consistently come to fruition. I'm going to abstain on my opinion on this because I think these next 6 games will say a lot. Unfortunately, they're coming against teams, some of which are not very good. So that may play into his favor a little bit, much like, the season-saving wins at the end of the year for Marvin last year. But for now, I think there's 6 important games left. And, if he can make some adjustments to rely a little bit more on the running backs, all that kind of stuff, I'll be a little more pleased. But for now, it's been much like everything with the Bengals over this past month and a half has been a sharp fall off of a cliff. So that's where we stand on Lazor. And then real quick, I believe it was Andrew Seiler. This was the one I saw earlier and I missed. Pacman Jones recently released. Need and or want him on Cincinnati's defense?
I think even if we did need him, I think that's a name and face that they're better off just kind of leaving in the past at this point. Like we talked about the great purge from Lewis, and I think part of that was, having an exodus of players that he's kind of relied on just as human beings and such. And I think the more that we deviate from those players, like Vincent Ray is a good example of a guy who's gotten a lot of chances under Lewis and just hasn't performed up to the expectation of amount of snaps that he's been given. Pacman, there's a reason why he got cut from the Broncos. Obviously, he just wasn't playing up to par. He's probably doesn't have anything left in the tank at this point. Might as well just see what they have in Darkwood and are in a contract year. Obviously, you're still starting Jackson and Kirkpatrick, so they could probably use him, I guess, because the depth at cornerback isn't great. But at this point, I kind of want to stick with just moving on from those familiar faces in the Marvin Lewis era.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, he could help a little bit in the secondary potentially, but maybe even as a return man. But Erickson's actually having a pretty good year returning both punts and kicks, so I don't think there's a need there. Again, and who knows, that could be a catalyst to helping out the defense, or if the Bengals keep losing and you bring Adam Jones in and they're losing with him in the locker room, oh boy. That could get real ugly. So I'm with you. I just leave well enough alone and move on. Thanks for all the listener questions this week. We try and get to those every week in a variety of different fashions. We appreciate that, and we appreciate all the live listeners. You can get this show in a number of different ways. YouTube, Cincy Jungle, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and Art19. Have a happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Thanks for tuning into the Orange Black Insider. We'll see you next week. And let's hope the Bengals win the first go-around of the Battle of Ohio.